Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
Back with Shane talking about Kill Team Typhon, the newest release from Games Workshop, and probably one of the most hype releases, I gotta say, probably of the entire 3-year span, right?
Tyranids and Kill Team. Finally here. And then also the robots.
There's another team in the box other than the Raveners?
Well, okay, look. Me and Jason had to split the box, and I got stuck with the Battle Clay.
No, actually, I am personally more excited for the Battle Clade too.
I know, honestly, as soon as I read the rules, I was like, dang, Battle Clay looks pretty sick, and it made the choice really hard, because Travis was like, you should choose. And I was like, ugh.
Well, I mean, I had to let the Elites boy choose. I stole the Wrecker Crew back when those came out.
That's true.
Yeah, they're just like a weirdo team. They're the Battle Clade, so I kind of think that's what I like about them.
Yeah, okay, let's do a top line evaluation of the teams. Like for me on Battle Clade, I wrote the review on Goonhammer. I am of the opinion that they're probably the better half of the box, would be my guess.
The Battle Clade?
Yeah, to me they read a little bit more competitive, and they have some crazy strengths. To be fair, Raveners are pretty unique as well, but I just get the sense that 5 operatives is gonna feel pretty limiting at the end of the line, and the fact that they can't really kill a Marine in combat on the charge is like a little spooky.
It's very spooky. Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to hit them with a bunch of chip damage, and the Venom cannon I think is like not enough to help out that much. Also, I think it's like the worst operator on the team. Sorry everyone.
Yeah. What about you, Shane?
In regards to Raveners, I think. Like, I do agree that it's going to come down to chip damage when it comes to playing against elites. There is, a lot of chip damage on this team between acid. I mean, again, I don't really know how all of this is going to feel like once we get a bunch of games in, but stuff like acid blood, the fell talons, toxic lunge doing chip, the Burrowing Strike doing chip, and then just like their ability to hit you and then give you this very limited timetable to hit them back before they vanish basically from the board. It's a very interesting team, and I think that if my read is that if Raveners are good, they're going to be very, very good. I don't think there's much room in between. I think they're just going to be extremely good, or they're going to feel maybe a little under.
Yeah, I assume they're going to be super extremely popular. I mean, it really, really looks like a one-box team. Just like 5 models is fantastic. The Warriors, I'm not at all going to say Warrior spam for this team, because that is 100% an incorrect choice.
Yeah, I am not totally sure yet. I think the Venom Spitter is pretty good still.
Yeah,
it's just sort of like I don't know, because I think that he's definitely the best operative to like actively deploy on the board instead of putting in the tunnel.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, because his what's spooky to me about that model is him just setting up on turn 1, distending his sack or whatever you want to say, and then when he counteracts, he can flip his order and then shoot. Which is kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know. Like, just being able to order flip before counteract is like pretty powerful.
I mean, both teams do play around with their orders a lot more than I think any of the other teams of any of Kill Team history have done, right? Like the Battle Clade's New Spheric network lets you change orders when you go onto these GA2 network counteracts. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, the Clade is. I like the Clade. They're definitely, they have all of this like action economy freedom, but they don't actually really like I don't know. It's kind of interesting because they don't have a comms. They just have like things like, oh, I can tell a guy to dash, or I network counteract to let a guy do something out of activation, and it'll usually cost you an AP to let them do that. So it's not really usually an actual expansion of their economy. It's more just they mess around in the ways that they decide to, or when they decide to do stuff. They can kind of go out of activation and out of order.
Yeah, there is kind of one workaround to that, because their equipment is like you can do a network counteract for 0 APL as long as the action that you're commanding with it is like not a combat action. So essentially, you can still like move and push a button and command someone else to shoot, or like network counteract someone to shoot, or network counteract someone else to like push another button. So there is kind of like some. That's like the one way to come out ahead in APL. And if you do that like a couple times per turning point, all of a sudden, like their action economy, I think it gets a lot better. You just need to be very, very precise. Like your action monkeys are always going to action monkey, your fighters are always going to fight, and if you're suboptimal, you're suffering.
Yeah, the way I've seen the network counteract play out when I've noodled around with them is it's really more about the attention economy. So in a lot of games of Kill Team, people are very much paying attention, like what's the last thing that you can do on this side of the board. And if you finish on like, oh, I finished on this side of the in the dark board, you're like, okay, I can just bum rush this. But the Battle Clade are never really off. Like every operative is always ready to shoot. So you're always playing against the entire board at the same time for the most part until all the servitors are done, which can feel like a very bizarre feeling. Like everyone is always ready to scare you.
Yeah, because you read the Nospheric network, and it like you have to read it a few more times because you think for some reason when I read it, I kept thinking there were different restrictions in there, and there's not really any
there's
restrictions.
Very few actual restrictions.
Yeah, so it's they definitely nail the feel of a interlinked kind of AdMech robot team. They give me kind of like Hyrotech vibes in the way that they're sort of like a synergy team, and I think it's not super straightforward how they function, but I think playing against it is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, I think I've played against myself a couple times just to get a sense for how the stat sheets feel. And over the couple of games, I've just realized, like, man, this is the only team in the game where you're firing these heavy weapons multiple times in a turning point. And that's definitely something that no other team really gets to do, right? Like Space Marines with their heavy weapons fire the big weapon and then they fire the bolt pistol. And that's basically what they're doing. And then sometimes they get a guard action, but Battle Clade are just doing that during the turn actively. Like if you don't kill the thing that has the heavy gun trained on you, it's going to shoot again, 100%.
Yeah, so if you can like line it up on an expended target and then shoot them, and then they can't shoot back before you network counteract to shoot it again, you're really going to be cooking.
It's kind of crazy because if you are playing, they're going to be very good against elites, I think. Because first of all, the Techno Archaeologist's Omni Scanner, it lasts the whole game. You just give it to a guy, and you permanently have ceaseless on that guy, and you can by like turn 2, you're gonna have ceaseless against like maybe 4 guys, possibly.
Yeah, because you can also do it as a strat, as a strategic campaign.
Yeah, and then like if ideally like if you wait out the Marine player, you can always kind of like hold your Meltagun, make the Melta dash when the Marine's done activating, and then activate the Melta, run up and shoot, and then activate another guy to network counteract to have the Melta shoot again. So it's like and that's not even like, it sounds like a lot, but it's actually not a crazy sequence to happen, and it's probably going to be kind of a common situation. I think
some of the fun stuff, like it's such a toolboxy team because all random servitors all have like a different function. So having a breacher open up a hole for you means that the melt again can be in the middle of the board safely, just like how the Rekka Crew's bombs quick and sit behind a wall, kind of out of vision, and suddenly now there's a melt gun. Pretty spooky.
Yeah. I mean I will say the Battle Clade, they definitely fall apart a little bit in terms of like once you get on them, they're not very durable. They don't have a ton of defensive.
They have a little bit more defense just because they've got the shrug. So one of their strat ploys is every 3 damage hit, you get a a 5-up chance to block a damage, which is reasonable. You know, you're gonna get 1 or 2 more wounds out of them most of the time. And on your 11 wound big guys, it's gonna feel probably like 13, 14 wounds, right?
Yeah, it's it'll be okay. I honestly wonder if, like, I can see Incantation of the Iron Soul, that's the damage reduction ploy, being like not taken that often, just because people get frustrated with like spending a CP on it and then it like doesn't go off, or it like never gets the chance to really be relevant, because like it'll just boil down to like you'll get hit with a crit and then you need to get the 5-up on the normal or you're dead, and you usually won't on the one guy, so it's, I don't know.
Does it only work on normal hits?
Oh no, actually it's not normal hits. I'm wrong. So I guess my thought really was like a chainsword, for instance, like the chainsword being 5 damage, getting yours to 4. It won't super matter if they fail the other one.
Yeah, definitely not a team that really wants to be up close. And then, like, you have the Melt-A-Gun that wants to go up close, but it really does feel like a shooty-oriented team that has, bait pieces, which feels very much... I feel like if you're doing well with Battleclade, you're going to feel like you've outthought your opponent by quite a bit, because they're hitting your dorks with flamethrowers and getting shot by these humongous guns. And then other times, you're just going to have your synergy piles fall apart as your opponents get a good hit in, find a good staging point, and they can push out and try to hit your heroes, who are super important. Those 2 9 wound 3-up save heroes are going to do a ton of work on the team, or 3 APL 4-up saves.
Yeah, and the one ploy for the tech priest to basically just ignore piercing completely is really good. Like he's pretty likely to. You kind of have to charge these guys, I've found. Like if you want the, I guess, somewhat more reliable way, but I think their best like charge tech is, or defensive melee tech rather, is they've got the capacitors if you take that equipment, so you'll get shock and severe, which is a pretty nice combo. And then if there is the weird ploy with, it's kind of like the Akalon's ploy, where you I think you pick an objective. Yeah, and then you I guess you can pick like I can't remember, what can this team take, recon? Yeah, you could pick like a
you can
beacon.
like plant a beacon and then later on say like, we're fighting over this for this turn.
Yeah, and I get +1 attack when I'm near it to a max of 4. So like some of your dudes with the servo claws are getting 4-on-4s, maybe ceaseless, severe shock. That's kind of decent as far as a defensive profile goes.
Yeah. And the big dudes have brutal weapons, so 4 attacks on 4s, 4 or 5 brutal weapons. You could maybe clean up a couple small dudes. Wouldn't do it against anything bigger than an 8 wound model, though.
Yeah, no. One thing I think is interesting is this is the only flexing that I see really happening here, outside of like individual weapons, is whether or not you want to take the technomedic servitor rather, or just another warrior. Because I can see, if you don't want the medic or you're against a melee team, maybe just take a combat servitor with like another flamer, or I guess if you really want long range, like, I don't know, a bolt gun that hits on 4s with severe it will have ceaseless sometimes, depending on what you're playing against.
And then you can get like accurate and balanced as well, and no obscurity. You can stack it up. It's a lot of work to stack it up like that, though. Don't know if it's worth it with hitting on 4s. I mean, if it's the best you can do, it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it's like probably only worth looking at just because outside of the phosphor blasters, they don't really like their long range shooting is like the gun servitor, and is that
it's the 2 gun servitors. You get the 2 heavy weapon servitors with the 5 attacks on 4s, ceaseless, accurate, hopefully most of the time when you're shooting. So maybe okay. Sometimes they'll have balance. So it's a pretty dicey shooting affair, but really you're doing it with volume of fire, because these servitors are all like firing twice almost any turn, unless your opponent is going to chuck Melta close in, because it's pretty hard to kill an 11 wound operative with cover on with a shrug, right? That's really what you're expecting. So the turns that they go on, they're going to shoot. And you could theoretically also network counteract and then just flip them back to conceal, which is also gross.
Yeah. No, I mean that's definitely something. And what scares me the most thinking about playing against this team is that moment when they would like win turn 3 or turn 4 initiative, and then you just get shot by 2 big guns. That's like a sign of a good team is when you spot something where it's like, oh, they have like very explosive potential on like one activation. And a lot of mid-range teams, I think, that's like a sort of a downfall for them, is they don't have that. Obviously, with elites, it's easy. Like they're 3 AP. Okay, they can charge, fight, shoot, or something, or double shoot.
Or just double shoot, yeah.
Yeah. So seeing that on a team like this is like a green flag when you're looking for like power level, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of the few 10 operative teams where you can have one activation that does quite a bit. It kind of reminds me of a fusion of like Imperial Navy breachers and a little bit of like the armory of the Hunter Clade, and like you have all these exotic weapons, but you're chaining together 2 operatives at the same time to go do one thing, or just 2 separate things. Except this time you have the entire map, and you can never have really 3 APL on it. So it feels like the pace of the game is 2 operatives doing things at the same time. Because you can have an operative move, shoot, and then have someone else shoot from the other side, and then have that guy who already finished take another shot. So you can have like 3 aggressive actions over 2 activations, which kind of feels similar to the 5 APL Imperial Navy breachers of old. At least in terms of offensive capability in shooting. Definitely not a melee team.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And like I do think that if you're playing into shooty teams, having the medic too is gonna actually feel really nice, just between like a decent amount of defensive tech, and then also, they don't have a lot of innate ways to get double kills outside of that, big moment where you like do the counterlink or network counteract and just shoot with 2 guys. So like you can definitely set up some spots where it's really tough, because I think this team loves just sitting on objectives if they can. They get a lot of bonuses out of sitting on objectives between their like ploys and stuff. And if you can establish like safe zones, that's probably really nice into those teams that I'd activate you.
Yeah, and then the Raveners are all about breaking those safe zones, right? For as far as like box pairs, I feel like the vibes are pretty good. I don't know if the gameplay is particularly fun in the box, just because Raveners feel like they ignore a lot of what the Battle Clade want to interact with, because they just show up on you.
Yeah, yes, they do. And they sort of like force you to, I don't know, it's kind of weird, because it almost gives me Echelon vibes, where Echelons kind of force you to play the game like very passively on turn 2 if you don't want to get hit. And Raveners sort of do that, but there's only 5 activations. So, I mean, they kind of do it through their counteracts and like the very powerful counteracts that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because
but they can also just go in close so much faster than Tempestus Aquilons can, right? Because when Tempestus Aquilons drop out of the sky, they've used a reposition action. Whereas when the Raveners go, they're just booking it after they get out of the tunnel.
Yeah, and like the tunnel moves farther. Like you can move 5 inches, and it's just you place the token within 5 inches, and there's a little bit of space there, so it's kind of like you're gaining 6 inches on the tunnel every time, or like just barely under. And then if your model appears just barely touching the tunnel and then can still like charge after that, you're really like ripping all over the place.
Yeah, and it's like, I guess in the second half of the turn, when you're counteracting, it's a little more like the Echelon part, because you can, assuming you're not doing a mission action, you can burrow out for free and then do something. So like you can burrow out into like engagement range and then fight on a counteract, which is nuts. And the other thing too is that you can do the burrow action in control range too. So it's like you can't even really necessarily lock them down, because they kind of have like a super 1 AP fallback. So like
you really want to bait them away from the tunnel, right? If you can get them to like charge you off of the tunnel, you're in a good spot, because then they're just stuck there with you, and they'll probably kill you because they'll counteract and eat you. But
then you can kill them back.
And they're so powerful on the tunnel.
Yeah, like they're super, super killy, super durable, super sneaky on the tunnel. if you just like bait them, like like you were saying, if you do just like pop out and charge there, and like you get what, 1 kill out of it, like you probably can't even also score, and then they probably kill you for it, and all your buffs go away, all your rerolls go away if you're not on the tunnel. It's a very rough time to be a Ravener that's not on the tunnel.
Yeah, because the difference between a Ravener not on the tunnel and on the tunnel, if the ploys are online, it's pretty nuts. Because like they'll get like for instance, if they're on the tunnel, they can reroll any of their defense dice.
Yeah.
And a 5-up save isn't great, but 5-up with 20 wounds, rerolling all your defense dice, and with tunnel lurkers, if you have that online, you're also treated as being in cover.
Yeah.
So unless they're within 2 inches, obviously, but like, so it's kind of interesting. Like you can sort of, you have to lure them out, which means that I think on turn 2, there's this weird game where like they're sort of forced to just throw the tunnel towards the middle objective, I think, kind of, or else they just like totally don't threaten Cradop at all. And then it's also the problem of you're a 5-man team, and some of these missions, I mean, most of these missions, you want to be on your back point to some capacity. So there's a juggling act here with this team, and I'm not totally sure how good they are. Like loot sounds horrible, right?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Like you just sort of have to commit to like, I'm going to loot my back point once, and then I'm just going to try to loot yours as much as I can after that.
And like the trouble is, if you loot your back point once, either your tunnel is over there and then it's probably not also reaching the enemy's tunnel, or it's not, and then you just have a bug that's committed to standing nowhere near the tunnel by your home base objective. And like you could like loot it multiple times, but that seems like insanely not optimal use of a whole Ravener to just sit there and babysit a point. So it's really tough.
They're at least 7-inch movement, so they can pivot pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably solid to have the what's his name, Mr.
the Venom Spitter.
Yeah,
just sit in the back and camp it a little bit, and then I mean you could also, I suspect that there's probably a way to like run a tunnel on the first turn to like get close enough where you can drop yourself off of the tunnel near your first point and then send it to the middle. You won't get as much of the 17-inch like turn 2 threat range from the midpoint, but you could probably threaten a bubble around the middle and then still have a tunnel that touches your back line if you need to go run back and defend it.
Yeah, one thing that I definitely noticed with noodling around with this team a little bit is if you are too ambitious with the tunnel and what all you're trying to achieve, it just like falls apart and you lose horrendously. So
you
really just like
split, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's kind of like I think the team's gonna be very map dependent. Like I haven't tried all the maps, but some maps, or like if you play 5 games on every map, you'll figure out the best path for a tunnel. And if someone is playing against you and they know what your best tunnel is and they just block a spot that you like, razor wire seems like it wouldn't be helpful against the tunnel, but if it's like I can only make it to here and then you put it just past that and I need to be able to like threaten the objective and you just like cut that off, razor wire is going to be like the death of this team, but you just have to put it 100% perfect or it's useless.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess on the topic of like looking at the other specialists here, the Wrecker, pretty fantastic model. Really weird. I just want to talk about his crush rule with his sighting tail ends. Just his like, you just gamble every time. Not even a gamble. I mean, you just like maybe. I mean, what's the max? He can do up to 8 damage basically. Yeah. If he gets the. Yeah, if he gets the correct.
Notably, the Rekka, I guess since not everyone might know the rules, I'll just call it out here. The Ravener Rekka is the only 4-up save model on the team, and it has the reinforced carapace, so any normal crit damage of 4 inflicts 1 less. So that could be pretty annoying. So he's kind of your bruiser operative. He's got 5-on-3s, 4/5 melee with crush instead of rending or brutal or any of these other specific melee rules. And it's whenever you strike, you and your opponent roll off. And you add 1 to your result if your weapon is used against an operative with 9 or less wounds, and if you win, you deal extra damage based on the difference to a maximum of 3 additional damage. So he's got like 4, 5 plus D 3, kind of.
And he can one-shot elves.
Yeah, you could one shot on. You could mess up a lot of things. Like you hit with a crit, you could just one shot an 8 wound operative.
Yeah. And like there, he's getting the +1 against elves. That's the thing, is he's getting the +1 against anything that he can one shot, pretty much outside of like a 9 wound model. So it's pretty funny. That model's really good. The Wrecker is fantastic. Like 4-up save, like you said, damage reduction. Also, his tail has piercing, which I think is pretty funny.
He's just so juiced compared to the other ones.
Yeah,
Because everyone has this weird silent profile, which I guess is basically used to just kind of force your opponent to engage with you, right? Since you're a 5-man elite team, you really want your opponents to charge, and like if they're gonna shoot you, they have to get in close so that someone else can go interact with them. So everyone's got a silent profile, but they're all range 3 silent profiles, and they're just bolters. But the Wrecker, for whatever reason, has piercing 1.
Yeah, the Crusher.
Yep.
Yeah, and like those attacks are so like suboptimal. It's kind of just like use it as like a bonus. Because if you are like exposing a whole Ravener or doing a whole activation where the only thing you're gaining out of it is a shooting attack that has no rerolls from 3 inches away, yikes.
It's kind of funny when you just like if ever needed, you can just counteract, pop out of the tunnel and stay on conceal and shoot, and like you can maybe pop out onto a spot where you're in heavy cover. And then just maybe get free damage.
Yeah.
So that's nice. In the Ravener Prime 2, he doesn't have piercing, but he does have rending on his little bolt tail. So that's cool. I do like the synaptic link on the leader, where you can potentially gain CP. You pretty much, unless you're rolling a 1 on turn 1, you're going to get a CP on turn 1. You're decently likely to get it on turn 2, and I think you basically never care about the damage because it's likely you're going to take Metamorphic Flesh, I would say, a lot of the time.
Yep, that's the equipment option for anyone that doesn't know. That lets you heal a D3 every time you activate. So if it's like turn 2 and your leader's in the tunnel and you roll a 1 and take a damage, then you heal it before you leave the tunnel anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the team has great CP economy, which is great because they have very good ploys as well.
They're very hungry to use them too. Like you don't really want to go loud without having a couple ploys ready to go, and strat ploys already on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you hit the CP on turn 1 and 2, which most games you will, then you're going into turn 2 with probably. I mean, I'm trying to think back to when Legionnaires would just get the free CP. Yeah.
You would start with 6, which is just
6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 if you go second, which you're probably going to want to do because you've got 5 operatives. You really want your opponent to make as many moves as possible before you jump out of the tunnel.
Yeah, and most of your guys are going to be underground, so they don't even have anything they can do with initiative a lot of the time. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There was one play that I came across that is particularly interesting, where if you tunnel through someone, and then whether you have the initiative or not, like especially if you're threatening multiple people, you can pop up and you can burrow and be on conceal and in control range, and then you can still fight people. And if you have tunnel lurkers, they have to get within 2 inches to shoot you.
Yeah.
So you can kind of it feels like you're standing out in the open, but you are just like stealth ambushing people and being unshootable back unless people get danger close. And then if they get close enough for that, the Tremor Scythe can ambush them, because the Tremor Scythe can counteract, is basically can act or counteract essentially like guard, but it's charging out of the tunnel completely.
Yeah, that ability is crazy.
Super gnarly.
Just the subterranean ambush, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
You just like the team is very they're forced to be proactive just because of the limited number of activations, but they have so many little tools to be reactive. Like obviously that's a big one. And then the subterranean horror, the fight first. Assuming you're on the tunnel, which a lot of the time you will be. So, and I like from my experience playing teams that have that, like Crude or Mandrakes, it's more of like like a deterrent to fight rather than something you actually end up using a ton of the time, especially with these 20 wound models. Like with Kroot back in the day, some people would be like, well, you're going to strike first, but you do 3 damage. Maybe I can weather that and kill you anyway. I mean, not a lot of people are going to charge a Ravener on the tunnel and try to fight.
Yeah, I think the only real letdown on the team is that your melee rules are kind of boring. Like most of the time, it's just 5-on-3s, 4-5, some words, and balance or ceaseless, which is you could lose against most of the Marines in single combat.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're playing against Marines, you just like Jason said, you got to get that chip down. You know, the fell tailing becomes really, really powerful. I will say the Wrecker has the potential to kill Marines in one fight.
Yeah, the Wrecker is definitely your strongest wrecking ball, so to speak.
Yeah. And then you'll have Burrowing Strike once per turn for those like crucial fights. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. They're and then we also we kind of left out when we were talking about chip damage, the Felltail, and he has poison. He's got the Plague Marine rule.
Super important. Yeah.
Yeah. Which unless you're playing as Battleclade, you can't get rid of poison.
Yeah, normally you just suffer through it until you die. As everyone who's played against Hand of the Archon would know.
Yes.
Plague Marines.
Yes. I know we're talking about Raveners, but I just was reminded of the System Exorcism Battleclade ploy. There are some absolutely hilarious things that ability can turn off. Like Dirge Maw, Mandrake Dirge Maw, that is an effect.
Yeah, and it's when your opponents are giving you a token for, you're like, I'm just going to remove that.
Yes.
Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, it's a firefight ploy that just you purge the system and you just get rid of any kind of like effects that are put on you. So
unless you put it on yourself.
Yeah, could you opt to make it go away anyways if you for some reason had like -1 APL? I don't know if they even do that.
If your opponent gives you the -1 APL, yes, but if you give yourself the -1 APL,
oh, that's right. They had a specific
they make
sentence about that.
A distinction. It's like you put it on yourself, you're stuck with it. Your opponent tried to do it to you. You can purge the ghosts.
Yeah. It's pretty funny though. I have to think about some of the other silly things that are like.
I mean, the Omen, I guess, would make sense. Hand of the Archon, like anything that your opponents are just trying to curse you with, you just get out of your system so you can keep going.
Yeah. Omen is a funny one. I mean, not that you would ever omen the enemy anyway, but you definitely don't do it against Battleclade. Yeah. It's pretty funny. I mean, the tech priests in the servitors have some funny ways to just like, I don't know. Everybody thinks they're boring from like the look of them, but I think they're actually a very dynamic, fun team to play from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm definitely pro Battleclade after building them and painting them. I kind of enjoyed the paint process for them. They're pretty easy too, just because it's like all metal, and metal on miniatures is pretty straightforward to just get like a pretty nice looking effect. And they ended up playing way more complicated than I would have expected, and definitely in a positive way rather than a negative way. Whereas Raveners, I think, I can't tell if they're going to be broken, but I just assume that the 5 operatives is going to feel a little crippling. And as much as I like the design of the team, they do feel a little basic.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of all comes down to the way that you maneuver the tunnel, I think. And like, I don't know, my read on it is you just have like, if the Ravener player is playing well, they're still going to get shot sometimes, like they have to get shot sometimes, but the best you can do is like make it so that your opponent has like a very small window to hit you before they can't hit you anymore. And then ideally you'll survive and then heal next turn when you activate again, and before they can hit you again, you're in the tunnel. And I actually need to check. Does the metamorphic flesh, the heal does not work on counteract. It's only on
it's only during your when you're activated. So you activate, you get your D3 wounds, you do some stuff, and then when on your counteract, as long as you're not doing a mission action, you can like fight and then just burrow away, which is pretty good. So it really is going to be your opponent staying away from the tunnel, or they're baiting you off the tunnel. But if they're baiting you off the tunnel, it's pretty, risky. The 17-inch eat is cool, but it does incur a ton of risk for that Ravener that goes off the tunnel. So you might just be forced to play a more cagey game.
Yeah, but then it's from the Ravener perspective, if you can lean into that, like storm objectives, and I just burrow straight to your home base. If you avoid it, I just take 6 points. And if you don't, then it's the bloodbath that I want it to be as the Ravener player.
Yeah, I do agree. They're going to be pretty cool with storm objectives. They're unfortunately looking at infiltration on the other side. I cannot see myself using infiltration with Raveners too much.
Just don't.
That sounds horrible. But I on the topic of TAC ops, why do Battleclade have infiltration? What are we doing there? Because I keep assuming that there's security recon, and then I look again and I see infiltration, and I just like.
Well, you forgot about the funniest equipment that they've released so far, which is every servitor pulls off a mask at the beginning of turn 2, and they're like, I was actually this whole ass different servitor. So really, they're a chaos cult infiltration team, right? They just a bunch of dudes hanging out on the beach. They show up and they reveal themselves to be guns and just starts blasting people.
Yeah, what's happening there? Are they just like hitting a button on their wrist and like their whole left side is just changing into a different gun? Like I was a Melta-gun the whole time. Like what? My question is, why aren't they all doing? They should all hit that button. We need 10 Melta-guns. Yeah, that's a really funny one. They're the network. Counteract one where you don't subtract an AP, but you can't do a fight or shoot is like, I mean, on more mission, I mean, I don't know. It's probably just really good because you're going to end up taking beacons with this team a decent amount. That's
what I've kind of landed on. And I was actually surprised at how much easier it was to do beacons with a 5-inch move team, just because you are really shuffling your activations around. So having a dude walk over 8 inches to your opponent's side, and then having the other dude on the opposite side of the map do your 4-inch beacon and also your opponent's side beacon is kind of crazy. And it made it a lot easier to kind of work around than I was expecting on that team.
Yeah, I mean, you can get both beacons out in one activation, which is kind of funny. I don't think any other
your opponent goes to
that.
Interact with you, you flip them over, and you're like, oh, there's actually a Melta-gun that you were on the other side of the map. You thought the Melta-gun was going to do the 4-inch move? No, my friend. He's the one on your side of the map.
Yeah.
Can you
it's funny.
Can you do the shuffle if you've been shot? So, like, could I shoot someone and then shuffle them next to the medic?
You sure can. As long as you haven't done an action.
Your weapons. Or your
you can use your
stuff.
weapons, your actions, but there is a hole where you can use a passive ability. So if for some reason on turning point 1 you get a shot with a kill an eye, the servo proxy or auto proxy who gives you saturate, you can still switch that spot at the beginning of turn 2 because you haven't actually used a weapon or an action on the card.
That's interesting. I want to see like the ways that people do crazy stuff with Battleclade. I mean, for sure, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too soon because maybe Battleclade is one of the teams that can actually like do surveillance, just because of the sheer number. Because not only can you have an aggressive activation with a guy, like later in the turn you can network counteract, flip into conceal, so that way he's eligible to do surveillance and then do it. So like. Maybe that's actually good. I don't know. When you have confirmed kill and plant beacons, it's kind of a hard sell to take surveillance unless you're playing like Mandrakes. But
I would also note that they are one of the weirder teams who can wiretap, maybe proactively also, just because your techno archaeologist can do it as a strategic gambit. So if he's in a weird spot, you can do it before the turn starts and your opponent's already on it, and then run away basically.
Yeah, like a perfect wiretap is just like 2 points. Can you remote wiretap? Can you do that from 4 inches away with however that works? I forgot how that works.
With the remote access. So it is. It's only with markers. Ability? Yeah, so it relates to it's either access points or markers. to like do a mission action. So I don't think you could do anything like that. Like you can't plan to. I mean, it would be weird to. That would make sense anyway. First of all, the beacon's not there. You don't need the beacon to do the action, and then
So you couldn't
planting 4 inches away
you
would
couldn't
be
plan
cute.
to beacon with it either.
No.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of the bigger rule breaks in the game too. Remote access is a Battleclade ability for one of your 2 tech priests, because you have 2 of them. One of them plays around with the servitors, and the other one just like runs around and does mission actions and gives things ceaseless for the rest of the game, who's technically your leader. But remote access lets you ignore operatives if you have other operatives floating around on that objective for you to basically steal control. And that's a pretty big rule break, because you have a 4-inch activation range rather than the standard 1-inch activation range for mission actions.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some borderline, like it's not quite larcenous level or like poach level, but if the enemy ever leaves their back objective for even a moment, the assistant to the techno-archaeologist can run up and move dash and pay a CP and just like yank it if he gets within 4. So that's kind of a terrifying thing to threaten. And also, like, my first thought when I read the remote access was ITD having like a gun on the door and having the archaeologist open the door from far away and then tell the gun to shoot or something.
Only the Underseer can do that, but
yeah.
There's some crazy stuff that you can do, which is cute, because that was one of the things that I got to do with AdMech, or like the old AdMech team back in the day, because you could have the combo of a serval skull and a dude, and with your data tether, you could have one of your dudes open a door for free, have the other guy shoot, and then have the other guy go on guard, and then just like brick down a room. So it's kind of cute that we're getting some version of that in the new AdMech team.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have an AdMech team that's interesting, personally.
Yeah, it's too bad
like
that they tried to update them a couple times, but they left them as mostly a fair team with very fair rules. There's just nothing too special going on outside of the GA2 stuff.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, I think that both of these teams have a good amount of potential. I'm not sure how. Like, I think that you are right in that the Battleclade has maybe a higher likelihood to be good. I'm not sure if either of these teams are. I wouldn't put them in like an S tier for sure. I think they're both probably closer to the middle out of the gate, but I don't know. There's some crazy stuff with Battleclade. I think just the experience of playing against them is going to throw people off a lot.
Yeah, I think both of them are probably going to feel very weird to play against, but I think Raveners will be a little bit more straightforward to pilot, at least initially, just because standing on a tunnel and turning on all of the words is pretty easy to grok, and the Battleclade require you to think like, oh, what if I could just use every operative twice for the whole turn? Where would I want every operative to be if they could only stand still if I could use them twice? So it's like setting up a kill web that sits on the battlefield ahead of time, which is not the easiest skill.
Yeah, I do think some of the early experiences against Raveners is going to be emotional damage for both players, because it's just like, you can what? And then all of a sudden you swing and you have 2 hits with no rerolls, and you just get like, are the Ravener getting smoked because you're not on the tunnel? It's like how easily they die and how easily they sneak up on people it has some real big potential for emotional damage for everyone involved.
Yeah, even 5 attacks on 3s, like even with just balance, like if you charge off the tunnel and you only have balance, I've seen enough games where that lands 2 hits and you're just crying in the corner, and then that's going to feel insanely rough, because now your 20 wound operative is trapped in melee combat with something.
Or you set up like the totally unavoidable like burrow attack where it's just such a long threat range they can't do anything about it, and then you kill them and you're like feeling so good about your monster bug that just like nuked a guy, and then a bolt gun comes up and does like 12 damage to you, and you're like, oh, I have a 5-up save. That's right.
I both have a 5-up save, and now I hit on 4s. Even if you heal D3, you're like, oh man, that's not where I want to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely want. I see the power. Looking at these, looking at the Ravener rules It's just I hate picking up my models, and this team it's going to feel so bad every time you pick up a model. It's
I mean, that's
just
why you're playing
brutal.
Ravener, or that's why you're playing Felgor Ravagers and Higher Tech Circle for the longest
Yeah, there's
time,
a
right? Like,
pattern.
no one
Yeah,
dies.
yeah, there's a pattern here, guys. I don't know. But I do think that there is like some very interesting stuff you can do with um Writhe Out of Sight.
Oh yeah.
Which it's interesting that it's called Writhe Out of Sight because sometimes you're not necessarily you're kind of doing the opposite of that with this play. You're just doing a burrow action. But I'm thinking of like the unseen ways that you can disrupt the opponent. Say you lose initiative on turn 3, and they've got like a Meltagun in a pretty nice spot, and they take initiative because of course, and then you throw forward the next tunnel, and then you pay CP, and like maybe you can put a Ravener in control range with the burrow on the now longer tunnel of the Melta, and they're just like their turn 1 is just like crushed, or not their first activation is just sort of like crushed, and they're like, crap, what do I do now?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because it is not restricted to burrowing out of the tunnel.
Yeah, if I'm understanding it correctly, it just says they can perform a free burrow action, which burrow action it is
Goes
open to
both
both going
ways.
in and going out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like operate hatch.
It should be called slither in / out of sight, just to cover all the bases.
Writhe, yeah, exactly.
Or writhe out of sight, yeah.
Writhe in and out of sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a really cool team, and it's definitely a team that I expect you're going to want to hostage take pretty proactively, right? Like if you're not going to be on the tunnel, you don't want to kill the thing that you charge. So like your opponent does an action, you just charge them and wait for the tunnel to catch up with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little afraid as like somebody that I'm looking at Goremongers to play right now as a team for me right now. And I am looking at the Ravener rules and I'm like, oof, this seems like it's going to be hard for melee teams to deal with. I think in some capacity, like beyond just the the fight first, but also, there's 20 wounds, 21 wounds. One of the guys has damage reduction. Sometimes I'm hurting myself when I hit them in melee. It's not a particularly easy team to play. I think they can definitely stat check. And I think they have enough tools in the toolbox to make themselves viable in the situations where they don't just stat check the opponent. So they have the potential, I think, of the best of both worlds, where some matchups they could just roll over, kind of like Goremongers, honestly, where some matchups they can roll over just because the stats are just really good for them. And in other matchups where they can't stat check, I think they have a very cool variety of ways to like approach. If you're clever with the tunnel and the ways you decide to do damage.
And push comes to shove, if you're really worried about your opponent's positioning, you can just keep people in the tunnel and give up a couple points while the tunnel expands, right?
Yeah, you can play a super passive turn 2 if you want. If you're like me and you don't like picking up your models, you can delay the inevitable until turn 3 when bugs have to start dying eventually.
I mean, the thing that you
yeah.
can do, right, is as you extend that tunnel at the beginning of turn 3, you burrow onto someone, and then now your opponent's like, what do I do? And then everyone else that is interacting with you, you just start on the tunnel, pop out, and start fighting. So there might be some situations, like, these melee teams are trying to get in danger close anyways. You could just wait out for the tunnel to hit the ball of units and then burrow into multiple dudes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's if you're what's his name, the Tremor Scythe, if that guy if you're consistently able to like keep him safe in a safe spot, like at the start of the turn, like for the start of the next turn, it's almost kind of like you just like, I don't want to say you always have initiative almost, but like you're the ways that guy can devastate you, I think it's just kind of crazy. Because your opponent can go first activation, get interrupted by the Tremor Scythe. Tremor Scythe comes out, kills them, and then their activation is over. And then the Tremor Scythe that is in a dangerous spot can now activate, right? And go kill more people. And then maybe when he's done killing people, he can go back underground. Like that subterranean ambush is so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just stay away from the tunnel. Like, it's the same kind of worrying play pattern that the Tempestus Aquilons had to get a whole extra operative to go over, and it was just your opponents just ignore your game mechanic and just stay away from you. Luckily, the Raveners have the ability to force you to interact with them, whereas Tempestus Aquilons, you really were just kind of like stuck.
Yeah.
17 inches is a much easier range to interact with your opponent than I think 8 plus a dash. So
yeah, and they don't have to respect too many melee operatives. So like they can really target the Melta on like the Shooty Horde teams. And then they don't have that many ways to kill 5 Raveners, you know. So I think that they have some juice for sure. They must. And on top of all that, like manipulation, where like, oh, you can't charge them because they'll fight first. They might be able to just jump into control range of my guy before I go. They can interrupt my activation with the Fell Talon. On top of all that, they can reroll initiative once per battle.
yeah,
If
as a little leader.
I like the requirement of if a friendly Ravener is underground and there's an enemy operative within 5 inches of the tunnel, which, I mean, after in the second half of the game, it's going to happen, like, which is the most important initiative rolls a lot of the time. So yeah, I mean, if you can't mitigate losing initiative, one of the many ways that you have, then you might just be able to outright win it with a reroll. So
yeah, and also I guess we've been kind of talking as if it's the only game we play right now is on Volcus, where the tunnel positioning is relatively straightforward to follow, but on In the Dark, the tunnel is really abusive.
yeah,
because it's one of the few things where you can just show up in different rooms randomly, which is very not cool, as anyone who's played against Corsair Voids Guard can tell you.
Yep. No, it's pretty nuts. I think there's some craziness on ITD just with with the combination of the Venom Spitter plus the tunnel lurkers to get cover from the tunnel. You know, plus the ability to flip order on counteract and then shoot. And then on top of all that, if you have the chromatospore camouflage equipment, which gives you basically camo cloak, you're getting double retains if they shoot you more than 2 inches away if you're on your tunnel. And then let's say they don't have piercing, then your third dice you're probably re-rolling, like, so you get 2 chances at it. So double retain plus 1 5-up save with a reroll is hard to push through.
Also a team that's very good at popping a smoke.
Yeah, and they got smoke grenades in their somewhere. I don't know where they got them.
The little designer's note for like, oh, they do have smoke grenades, just flavor it as like a spore mine or something. I was like, oh, that's cute. It's a nice little nod as a little hobby project for anyone who's really interested in juicing it up. Because having a Tyranid ladder could be cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell all my opponents that I'm taking 2 spore-releasing organisms just to see their face, and I can point to it in the book and say, these are my smoke grenades.
The spore-releasing organisms, is it the stun or the smoke variety?
That's the smoke. And according to the designer's note, a fleshy tendril is a ladder. And don't ever say barricades, because they're not taking barricades, they're taking thick chitin.
I've seen those thick chitins on websites with 3D models.
Yeah, you could take that and say that it's lore accurate now.
And we haven't talked at all about the bonus stuff in the box because I don't have the book. Jason has the book. There's like a whole box of miniatures that we haven't talked about because all we've done is talk about the competitive chops for Raveners and Battleclad, which is fun. But I think there's a whole chunk of the book around kind of like the MPO stuff and the extra terrain. And it's like some of the cooler Tyranid terrain that we've gotten from GW, right? Like, I don't think we've seen this stuff before.
Oh, yeah. I'm planning to put that in my Beta Decima and juice up my Beta Decima with Tyranid terrain.
Oh, no. Are you going to cover it in mucus, too?
Maybe. Who knows?
Oh, man.
The danger zone is actually a Tyranid, was it biomass pool?
Yeah. Try to make a usable Beta Decima out of it as for just like casual games and plot twist boards.
Have you taken a look at the extra rules at all, Shane?
Not at all, unfortunately. I do think it's cool that they're including all this extra stuff in the box. They totally did not need to, because this is going to be such a good selling box just because it has a Tyranid kill team in it. And new Ravener sculpts. Yeah. And like the Tyranid 40k players, they want their Ravener sculpts for sure. So they'll be, poaching from us. And I the servitors, from what I've heard from the 40k people, every kill team squad ends up being OP in 40k. So I'm sure they'll have their scalpers too, from what I've heard. So
yeah, I think on the kill team side, most people I've heard are far more excited for the Raveners than they are for the Battleclade, just because not a ton of people that are into the Battleclade vibe, but a bunch of lobotomized sons being bossed around by their tech bosses is a pretty fun vibe, I think, as far as like
I think when people see the rules,
team.
I think when people see the rules, people are gonna like the Battlecade more, because like pretty much all the hype that we've seen so far at the time of recording this was like people's opinions without having seen the rules yet.
Yeah, and you're coming off of the shoulders of like 3 years of like impatient hype for a Tyranid team, and now we finally have it. And it's there's like a whole type of 40k person that is gonna want to play our game now, I feel.
And at the very least, I'm glad that for this edition, we got Vespids, Tempestus Accolons, we got Rekkas, Ratlings, and then we got Goremongers, Ecclesiarchy, and now we get Raveners versus Battleclade. I think they've done a very good job for the year mark, because this is kind of like the bookend of the traditional 4-act play that they've been doing for the last 4 years now. And I feel like they've done a very good job of making sure every team feels very distinct.
Yeah, and honestly, if you compare the just the rules and like the flavor of the teams we've gotten this season, this first season of the edition, compared to like the teams we were getting in like 2021 and 2022, there's so much more experimentation going on with different mechanics, and just like they're going crazy with it, and I welcome it. I like more of this weird, wacky stuff more so than I love Legionaries. Obviously, I played that team for a long time, but they are just 6 beefy dudes. And the teams that have come out this season are just so much more than that, I guess.
And I also like that it has felt, realistically, this last year has been relatively balanced outside of, one big outlier of balance.
Yeah, there's definitely not a Sanctifiers in this box. That's for certain.
Yeah, this reads to me much closer to like the Ratlings and the Rekka crew box, where like they both seem good in different ways, and they're both complicated and strange, but they don't seem necessarily broken. But maybe, we'll see. Maybe the Raveners there's something back in there.
Yeah, if I had to guess, this is probably the second strongest box this season. I think the Brutal and Cunning was interesting. Ratlings didn't really turn out to be as good as I think we all kind of expected. And the Hive Storm needed a few kicks. They might need,
they might need one more kick.
Yeah, the Vespids might need
more than one kick.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, there's definitely Raveners are going to shape the meta. Whether or not they're a top tier team, they're going to be extremely important in terms of, can your team deal with Raveners, because they're going to be all over the place.
Yeah, in total agreement there. Definitely one of the more interesting teams. Actually, a very interesting box as far as design. And I think they did a good job on all the sculpts.
Yeah, the sculpts look sick. I mean, the servitors are, it's hard to make servitors look super cool, but the techno, not the archaeologist, but
the Underseer is a cool model.
Yes, I do like that guy. And I think honestly, just the team looks cool on the table. The Battleclade, it just looks like what it's supposed to be. It's a couple of cool dudes, and they're
a bunch of trolls,
buddies.
Some homies and a bunch of totally normal humans they dragged out to defend this Imperial plant against a bunch of Raveners. until
Yes.
they pull the cloaks off and there's melted guns and bristling weaponry firing away. That's all great. And then the Raveners have got their tunnels. They're writhing in and out of the ground just like they're going to be doing in the game. So
Yeah,
we've definitely hit it out of the park.
we've got our 2 nerds and our 8 jacked robot hunks. That's what we need.
Look, I'm glad it's not another 10 Imperial weirdos, okay? I can only take 10 dudes hitting on 3s for so long.
Yeah, really. Who needs 3s when you have 4s as ceaseless, right? Isn't that just more fun 3s?
It
It's
is.
just
does,
3s, but more
least.
fun. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think that's like all of my early thoughts. I don't think there's anything I'm freaking out about that I've forgotten to mention. I want to try both these teams. I'm excited to add Raveners to the list of like whenever I'm prepping for a tournament, there's like a handful of teams where I'm like, can I actually deal with this? And I think Raveners are going to have to be on that list just because they're the nature of their like the way they play and how much
the hit and run ability of them.
Yeah, they're
right up there with Felgor.
Yeah.
I guess, quick takes. You've been playing a lot of Felgor Ravagers, Higher Tech Circle. How do you feel like they will fare against this pair of teams?
I don't. Well, Higher Tech, I think, would in their current state, I can see Higher Tech doing quite well into Raveners. They just have the ability to just like punish so hard the second they leave the tunnel. But maybe it's harder. Maybe it's easier said than done. They can keep themselves safe very well, but there's only so many places they can go where a gigantic Ravener can't get hit. As far as Felgor and Goremongers, I think they're going to really have a hard time into Raveners. It looks difficult, but on the flip side, Raveners are not going to have a particularly easy time killing Goremongers as well. With the half damage, and their melee is just a bunch of 4/5, so it's interesting. I think you really want like big damage shooting to properly deal with Raveners well, because chipping them only goes so far when they have like the heal going on every time they activate. So I don't know. This team scares me, but I'm excited to play against them.
And Jason, you're the Phobos-y person. How do you feel like Phobos are going to interact with the pair of teams?
Oh man, I actually hadn't thought that much about it from the Phobos angle. Because I've been playing a bunch of Kasrkin lately. But
the Kasrkin are probably doomed.
Yeah, Kasrkin are actually really cool, and the Auspex is very interesting, but man, they are so flimsy, and they have a bunch of abilities that are just a trap and are bad. I mean, I feel like for Phobos is still just so like insanely killy and so good at tac ops that they're probably not super threatened by this, and it's pretty much just anything that like touches you kills you anyways. And actually, the tunnel stuff is going to mess up Omni Scramble a lot, so Raveners are maybe one of the scarier teams for Phobos. Because like if I Omni Scramble you can go back in the tunnel, and then if I don't, then I'm in a tough spot. I don't know. It would take some practice for both players, but I think it could, with optimal play, Raveners could be horrible for Phobos.
On the flip side, against Battleclade, your Omni Scramble is quite good because they can't even network counteract with the guy. So that's cool. I do think we're going to be saying that a lot though about Raveners, where it's like there might be ways to like punish them, but if the Ravener player plays really well, that sounds hard. And that's kind of like where I'm landing when I think about playing against this team with a lot of teams. Like I think if the Ravener player is really sharp, they can like kind of navigate your threats pretty well.
Yeah, I think my expectation on the Raveners is just there might be some attention problems where as the tunnel extends out in a certain direction, you kind of give up leeway on the other half of the board. But maybe it won't matter because you just run the line, straight across all the objectives and it's fine. I've been playing a bunch of Pathfinders, obviously, because why wouldn't I? And I'm not going to lie, I do not want to play against the Raveners. That sounds like a nightmare. And
Yeah.
then the Battleclade are probably one of the teams that can actually go toe to toe on Pathfinder shooting and come out ahead, because your melee is not good, but it'll do the job against Pathfinders, and you do outshoot the Pathfinders because you've got the defender base, you've got the medic, and you can shoot twice. Where Pathfinders, once you kill their gun, it's gone forever.
Yeah, I mean the servitors, they're kind of outside of the combat or the gun servitors, they are basically elf bodies. 8 wounds, 4 up save on the on most of the guys. And actually, I guess the Underseer is a 9 wound, like the leader.
Yeah,
so
the two hero models, the tech priests, are both 9 wound, 3 up saves. So they're both like reasonably hard to kill for Pathfinder shooting, and they both can ignore piercing, and they can also thrall a servitor. So they're pretty survivable. And when you shoot, you'll probably kill a Tau, and when they shoot, they will probably kill a servitor. But trading fire is definitely where this team wants to be anyway. So if you get into a shootout with the hunter or the battleclade, at least you've got 2 shots when the Tau only get 1.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like them. I'm excited to see what these teams do to the meta.
Yeah, me too. I'm take Battleclade to the first tournament I can.
There you go. I might take Raveners. Honestly, this conversation has kind of got me more excited about Raveners, but I don't know. I want to see what they can do. They just seem very annoying if played well.
Yeah, you can just give your opponent a ghost town a bunch of times. So it's like you were mentioning earlier, whether they win or lose initiative, you can react to it in a way that completely crushes the start of their turn. And then I think that's actually part of the emotional damage I was mentioning earlier, because it's just when you subvert someone's expectations like that, you can rattle people up.
And they play around on ITD. I know we're kind of done, but on ITD they play around guard really well, because they come out of their tunnel and they can just be on conceal even if they're in your control range. So those models standing on guard in doorways looking at big rooms are not going to actually be able to punish your aggressive plays a lot of the time. So
very interesting. Yeah.
Overall, sick box. Good job, Games Workshop. Thanks, obviously, for giving us some review copies so that we could yap about these.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you guys for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And we're going to also review this on Command Point. So, when you're done listening
by
to
the
this,
time this podcast comes out, people will probably watch your reviews. So,
yeah. When you're done listening to this, go listen to the Command Point reviews.
Yeah, if you haven't already.